Welcome back to the lab, everyone. Dr. Cam here, and today we're jumping right into a brand new explainer. We're going to master total carbohydrate quantification, literally taking you from the microscopic chemistry all the way to your actual bench work. So whether you're analyzing food products, cell cultures, or some really complex polysaccharides, this explainer is going to give you exactly what you need for flawless execution. Let's get into it.
Okay, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with an introduction to the assay, then break down the chemical dehydration process, cover sample prep and procedure, go over some pro-wavelength tips, and finally, wrap it all up by plotting that standard curve.
All right, Section 1, Introduction to the Assay, the gold standard of sugar quantification.
So, let's lay down the foundation. What exactly does this method actually do? Well, the Phenol-Sulfuric Acid Method is honestly a total workhorse in the lab. It was first described way back in 1956, and we still use it everywhere because it detects virtually all classes of carbohydrates. We're talking everything from tiny monosaccharides right up to massive polysaccharides. And the best part? The color it produces is stable for hours. Plus, if your technique is solid, you're looking at an accuracy within plus or minus 2%. Pretty incredible, right?
Moving right along to Section 2, the chemical dehydration process, or as I like to call it, making the invisible visible.
Here's the fundamental problem. Simple carbohydrates don't have the aromatic rings or conjugated double bonds needed to naturally absorb UV visible light. They're essentially invisible to our instruments. So how do we transform them into a highly colored complex that we can actually measure? Well, we rely on a really beautiful two-step chemical reaction that happens right inside your test tubes.
Step 1 is all about the extreme power of concentrated sulfuric acid. When you drop that acid into your sample, it rips into those complex sugars and rapidly dehydrates them. Your 6-carbon hexoses get converted into hydroxymethylfurfuryl, or HMF for short, while your 5-carbon pentoses are dehydrated straight into furfuryl. And hey, if you've got larger polysaccharides in there, the acid actually hydrolyzes them into simple monosaccharides first, right before dehydrating them.
Now, Step 2. This is where the magic really happens. Those newly formed furan derivatives condense with phenol under these highly acidic conditions. It's an electrophilic aromatic substitution which creates a phenylfuryl conjugated system, or, to put it in plain English for our eyeballs, it produces that brilliant, stable, orange-yellow color. That specific color is the key to unlocking your quantification. Okay, let's get our hands dirty. Section 3, Sample Prep and Procedure, featuring my benchwork best practices.
You know, theory is great and all, but precise bench technique is what actually gets you published. Proper sample preparation is absolutely crucial. For solid samples, you'll usually extract using ethanol, or you might need an acid hydrolysis. For example, you'd weigh exactly 100 milligrams of your sample into a boiling tube, hydrolyze it with hydrochloric acid in a boiling water bath for, say, 3 hours, and then you've got to carefully cool it. Finally, neutralize it with solid sodium carbonate until literally every last bubble of effervescence stops.
All right, once your sample is prepped, we set up the main reaction. First, you add 1 milliliter of phenol solution to each tube. Then comes the make-or-break step, adding 5 milliliters of 96% concentrated sulfuric acid. After giving it a really thorough mix, you just let it stand, and then incubate your tubes in a 25 to 30 degrees Celsius water bath for about 20 minutes. This is what stabilizes that gorgeous color.
Listen closely, because I cannot emphasize this next point enough. When you are adding that concentrated sulfuric acid, you must add it rapidly and directly into the liquid stream. Do not, I repeat, do not let it just dribble slowly down the side of the test tube. Why? Because the highly exothermic heat of dilution from that rapid addition is absolutely critical for proper color development. No heat, no accurate color. It's really that simple.
Which brings us to Section 4, Wavelength and Spectrophotometer Tips, where we'll tune your instrument for success.
So, your tubes have cooled, the orange-yellow color is locked in, and it's time to hit the spectrophotometer. This perfectly illustrates why knowing exactly what's in your sample matters. Different sugars have different maximum absorption wavelengths. You absolutely must set your instrument to 490 nanometers if you're dealing with hexose-rich samples, like soft drinks or beer, and you'll use glucose for your standard curve. But if you're analyzing pentose-rich stuff, like wheat or corn bran, you have to use xylose for your standard curve and tune that wavelength to 480 nanometers instead.
Okay, time for Dr. Kem's top tips for getting flawless data. First up, always give your spectrophotometer a good 15-minute warm-up. Don't rush it. Second, always zero your instrument with a specific reagent blank. That means a tube with water, phenol, and acid, but zero sugar. Third, grab a lint-free tissue and wipe down those cuvettes. We do not want any light scattering messing up our readings. And finally, say it with me, always run your samples in triplicate.
All right, home stretch, section 5, plotting the standard curve, taking us from raw absorbance right to concentration.
We've officially reached the data analysis phase. This is where we translate our raw physical absorbance readings into quantitative scientific data. So you're looking at a number on your machine. Maybe it's an absorbance of 0.648. How do we take that raw number representing an orange liquid and turn it into a highly specific carbohydrate concentration?
The answer is the fundamental principle of spectrophotometry itself, the Beer-Lambert law. This law tells us that under dilute conditions, the amount of light absorbed is directly proportional to the concentration of the molecules doing the absorbing. Because this relationship is perfectly linear, we can test a series of standard solutions with known glucose concentrations and basically map out exactly how much light is absorbed at every single level.
And that mapping process, that creates our standard curve. Take a look at this perfect example. By plotting our known carbohydrate concentrations on the x-axis and our measured absorbance on the y-axis, we generate a linear equation, something like y equals 0.0437x. That simple equation, that's your mathematical decoder ring.
So to crack the code and find the concentration of your unknown sample, it's just basic algebra. You take your sample's absorbance, subtract your blank background, and plug that resulting value in as y in your standard curve equation. Then solve for x. Boom! There's your concentration. But wait, do not forget to multiply your final answer by any dilution factors you used during sample prep. If you diluted a soft drink 2,000-fold before the assay, you literally have to multiply your final X by 2,000 to get the true original concentration. Don't trip up on that.
Applying these meticulous calculations is what gives us real-world nutritional data. For instance, looking at the results of our assay right here, we can actually prove that oat milk contains slightly more carbohydrates per 100 milliliters than standard cow milk. That right there is the pure power of the Phenol-Sulfuric Acid Method in action.
Before you grab your lab coats and perform this for yourselves, I want to leave you with one absolutely critical thought. The accuracy of this entire assay completely hinges on the purity of your sample. If co-extracted molecules, like certain plant phenolics or proteins, happen to alter or darken the color of your reaction, how might that falsely inflate the total sugar results of your next complex assay? Keep that in mind as you prep those samples. Good luck at the bench, everyone, and stay curious.